It was a warm Friday afternoon at the corner of Maple Street, just outside Bridgeport's busy city center. Officer Levi Owen had just finished his lunch break and was sitting in his patrol car, sipping on the last bit of his coffee. Greg was one of those officers who seemed to believe that the badge on his chest gave him the right to treat others however he wanted. Today, that badge would lead him into a situation he'd regret for the rest of his life. Across the street, a black man dressed in a dark suit stepped out of a nearby cafe. His name was Kai Lucas, a confident and calm man. Though he had grown up in Bridgeport, he had spent the last few years working in another city. What nobody knew, though, was that Marcus had recently been promoted to captain and was assigned to the very precinct Greg worked in. But that was something Greg wouldn't find out until it was too late. As Marcus crossed the street, Greg's attention shifted from his coffee to the man walking toward him. There was nothing suspicious about Marcus, but for someone like Greg, any reason to cause trouble was good enough. He squinted his eyes, gripping the wheel of his car as Marcus walked closer. Greg didn't like how this man carried himself. Without warning, Greg got out of his patrol car, slamming the door behind him. He marched up to Marcus with an irritated face. "Hey, you! What are you doing around here?" Greg barked, stepping right into Marcus's path. His tone was harsh, the kind of tone meant to intimidate. Marcus stopped, looking at Greg with calm but surprised eyes. "I'm just on my way to a meeting," Marcus replied respectfully. Greg wasn't interested in the answer. "You look like you're up to no good," he sneered, stepping closer as if trying to provoke a reaction. "Got any ID?" he asked. Marcus reached into his jacket slowly, making sure not to make any sudden movements. "I'm happy to show you my ID, officer," he said, keeping his calm demeanor. But before Marcus could fully pull out his wallet, Greg's temper flared. "You think you can talk to me like you're some big shot?" Greg growled, grabbing Marcus by the arm roughly. Before Marcus could even react, Greg swung his fist hard, punching Marcus square in the face. The force of the blow knocked Marcus back, and he stumbled but managed to stay on his feet. Everything happened so fast. The few passers-by who witnessed the punch stood frozen in disbelief. Marcus, still steadying himself, raised his hand to his cheek where the officer's fist had landed. Greg smirked, clearly feeling justified in his actions. "Maybe now you'll learn some respect," he said. But just as he was about to turn away, Marcus stood tall again. This time, there was no mistaking the authority in his eyes. "You just made a big mistake, officer," Marcus said slowly. Greg snorted, still unaware of who he was dealing with. "Oh yeah, and what mistake is that, buddy?" Marcus stared at him, no longer the calm man who had just crossed the street. "I'm Captain Kai Lucas, the new captain of this precinct," he said. For a second, Greg froze, his face turning pale. He blinked, as if trying to process what he had just heard. What did you say?" he stammered, his confidence beginning to crack. "I said I'm the new captain," Marcus repeated, now standing firmly in front of the officer. "You just assaulted me, and I am going to press charges." Greg's smug expression melted away, replaced by panic. He couldn't believe what he had done. All the power and control he thought he had was now slipping through his fingers like sand. He had crossed the line, and now there would be no turning back. For a few heartbeats, Greg stood frozen in place, his mind trying to catch up with the words that had just come out of Marcus's mouth. The new captain, the thought buzzed in his head like an annoying fly. He had punched the new captain of his own precinct. Marcus stared at Greg for a moment longer before he calmly reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. This time, Greg didn't move. He watched, speechless, as Marcus pulled out his official ID card and held it up in his face. "I think this should clear things up," Marcus said. "But let me make myself even clearer. You assaulted a superior officer. I'm pressing charges, and you're going to answer for this." Greg's heart sank. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The arrogance that had been Marcus took out his phone and, without hesitation, dialed a number. Greg could only listen as Marcus spoke to someone on the other end of the line. "Yes, this is Captain Harris. I need a squad down here at Maple and Fifth Avenue. There's been an incident involving Officer Levi Owen," Marcus said. He paused for a moment, listening. No injuries on my side, but there will be charges filed for assault. Please send someone immediately." Greg's stomach twisted into a knot as he realized what was about to happen. His career, everything he had worked for, everything he thought he could get away with, was falling apart right in front of him. The whole time, Marcus stood there, his expression unreadable, waiting for backup to arrive. As they waited, a few pedestrians began to murmur among themselves. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others quietly discussed what had just unfolded. A few of them even recorded the entire incident on their phones, something Greg hadn't noticed earlier. The realization that this could end up on the news, or worse, all over social media, sent a cold chill down his spine. Before long, the sound of sirens filled the air. 2 squad cars pulled up, and out came a group of officers. Greg recognized a few of them. They were his colleagues, men and women he worked with every day. As they approached, the tension in the air grew thicker. One of the officers, Oscar Liam, a no-nonsense woman who had been with the department for over 20 years, stepped forward. "Captain Harris," she said, nodding respectfully. Her eyes flicked over to Greg, and she raised an eyebrow, clearly not understanding the situation yet. "Oscar Liam," Marcus greeted her. "I'm pressing charges against Officer Matt for assault. He punched me in the face without any provocation." Parker's face tightened in shock, and her eyes shot over to Greg, who stood there pale and sweating. "Greg, is this true?" she asked. For the first time in his life, Greg didn't know what to say. He stammered, his usual confidence completely shattered. I didn't know he was the captain." Parker didn't wait for him to finish. "Whether you knew or not doesn't matter. You assaulted a superior officer," she said flatly. She turned to the other officers and nodded. "Cuff him." 2 of the officers, men Greg had shared coffee breaks with and laughed with, stepped forward. Their expressions were hard, professional, as they moved to handcuff Greg. He didn't resist. He knew it was over. Once Greg was secured, Parker turned back to Marcus. "Captain, we'll take it from here. Is there anything else you need?" Marcus shook his head. "Just make sure this gets handled by the book, Sergeant. I'll be pressing formal charges as soon as we get back to the station." The cold, hard metal of the handcuffs around Greg's wrists dug into his skin as the squad car pulled away from Maple Street. He couldn't believe it. Just a few minutes ago, he had felt like he was in control, like he had all the power. But now, sitting in the back of a police car, his career and reputation in ruins, he was nothing more than a criminal in custody. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.